Please. Oh, come on! Little Mac has been widely regarded as one of, if not the absolute worst character in competitive Smash Ultimate. His design limits him within the scope of competitive gameplay, and for years saw next to no results among the competitive scene. To some, however, these limits were simply viewed as a challenge to overcome. In 2023, the North American scene became well aware of this hidden potential when Peanut made his first major stride in offline competition. He single-handedly put together a case for why Little Mac is far from the worst character in the game, and his wins over top 50 level threats like Rafflo and Kurama proved the character was more than a gimmick, and also had a pretty legitimate case to make some moves in the meta. Alright, that's it. So, there you go. Okay, no more credits. Actually, Peanut has not been the only catalyst of this movement. In most cases, low tiers have just one, maybe two representatives pushing the character at the highest level, but Mac is a surprising exception to this rule in relation to other similarly ranked characters. Little Mac might not have top 100 ranked threats yet, but he has joined the ever-growing wave of low tiers in Smash Ultimate that have begun unlocking potential that once seemed unattainable through a multitude of reps from around the world. Okay, that sounds good and all, but I'm sure a lot of you out there who may be a little less familiar with the competitive scene are confused as to why a character like Little Mac is considered low tier, or why any of this tier list is the way that it is in general. I mean, Little Mac does have a one-hit KO button. Pow! Right in the kisser. Since his introduction into Smash 4, he's been one of the fastest characters in the series. Add this up with his normals coming out faster than light and his smash attacks having super armor on them, his best neutral and kill options have a sense of security baked into them. That all sounds really good. When you can mash, maneuver, and kill your opponent, how do they even expect to win in the first place? At a level where you're just playing for fun, not trying to think too hard or develop a strategy, Little Mac is an absolute killer. The thing is though, a character's strength in a competitive environment isn't always determined by who has the most good attributes. Sometimes it's who has the least bad ones. And Mac is filled with bad attributes. In Smash, unlike other fighting games, jumping and the air in general matter significantly more. Not only do most stages have interactable platforms, but every character has an array of aerial moves and combos that they rely on. Also, don't even get me started about just jumping in general in Ultimate. There was a video from Fire the Pyro that covers that most recently, but everyone is so fast and it's so stupid, but anyway, I digress. Mac has the worst air game in the entire series, just flat out, that's it. In addition to that, on a majority of the stages, you will also, at some point, inevitably be thrown off the stage and asked to come back. The cost of not making it back is, well, an entire stock, so characters with good recovery moves are generally considered stronger right away because of this attribute. Looking at the low tiers, we see a lot of characters that possess not only lower than average recoveries, but for the most part just bad aerial games as well. And Little Mac. He sucks. And look, I'll say he's probably definitely better than the previous title, and that's by and large due to the increase in speed across the entire cast in Smash Ultimate. Max still has the worst combination of aerial flexibility and recovery in the game. Every single character has the chance to hit him off one time and continue to hit him until he can't return. And by continue to hit him, I mean just hit him a second time and then he just dies. And I know, look, you're already typing in the comments, well, okay, that doesn't really matter if we play on stages without ledges or platforms, then Mac doesn't have to worry. Shut up, you're wrong. A little bit, kinda. That is true, but in a competitive Smash tournament, we use a specific set of rules and regulations to limit the amount of variability that can happen in any particular match. In these regulations are a list of stages used, and notice how they all have ledges, and almost all of them have one or more platforms. And you can see where Max starts to run into a few issues. Oh, and let's also not forget the bountiful amounts of zoner players at the highest level, like Dabuz. Mac might have the speed to close space, but when you consider his lack of disjoints because he's just a boxer, and literally everything else I've mentioned, the risk reward starts to get skewed really heavily in the opponent's favor. In competitive play, the dummy's guide to beating Little Mac is essentially just getting a lead and then getting on the platforms, where he'll then be forced to do an aerial or double jump to land on the platform with you, and like I said before, Mac is really bad when he jumps. For years, people saw Little Mac's flaws and felt that they simply outweighed the strengths. In a vacuum, the character honestly sounds ridiculous. I mean, a boxer in a cast of this guy throws fire and this guy's an actual dragon or a lizard, whatever the hell this is. What is this? Come on. But in practice, against an opponent with knowledge on how to beat Little Mac, he can feel just really bad. High-level competitors are disciplined. They will not falter from their game plan. If you play against someone like Sonics, for example, who has no issue taking the game as slow as possible until he's determined he's okay with whatever situation faces him, you'll run at him over and over until you finally mess up. And with some of the most oppressive advantage options in the game, Sonics will take your stock. Simple as that. This works amazingly with Sonic, Steve, Pikachu, and many of the other high and top tier characters, but what if you took that same discipline and applied it to a character like Mac, who tends to tunnel vision on one aspect of the game that he really excels at? How far could this character truly be pushed? Could those disadvantages become negligible if you were so good in neutral that your opponent could never get you off the stage? Well, there's been quite a few players who have pushed Mac to a high level, so let's talk about them. Also, if you're enjoying the video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're hoping to get to 20K by the end of this year, and I didn't put on boxing gloves and sit in this 90-degree apartment to sweat my ass off for you to not subscribe. So, hey, I'm wearing these and subscribe, you. Let's first start with Peanut, the Mac player who I mentioned previously, and you all are likely the most familiar with. He began his ascent in Smash Ultimate following his introduction to the online tournament scene in 2019, where he slowly began to get better and better wins with his high-level neutral and optimized punish game. By the time in-person events returned in late 2020, Peanut was already ready to take over. He began racking up wins in not just his home region of Maryland, but on a national scale as well. Since 2022, he's put together arguably the best list of wins with Little Mac, including Apollo Kage, Anathema, Jazo, Capitancito, Base Mage, and Omega. That's honestly a great rap sheet. 2024 has been particularly inactive for Peanut compared to previous years, but he's still making an amazing case for this character, putting together a string of 65ths at majors this year, and he even made a top 32 at King Con in France back in February. Speaking of French players, at Regen 2024, an underrated Little Mac player from France, Naubody, went on one of the runs of the event. Naubody has been a consistent 2-2er in one of the strongest scenes on the planet, while managing to outplace his seed at quite a few tiered events in the past, but no one was that confident he would make the run he ended up making, especially with Little Mac. As the 144th seed, Naubody piloted the Bruiser from the Bronx to an outstanding +6 SPR. This didn't come at the sake of a player getting upset or a DQ. Naubody simply defeated each competitor as they came his way. Doorman, Jezo, Sansi, and Elite Tweet, all top 10 in their home countries, were not enough to take him down, and he eventually finished the event at 17th out of over 500 competitors. This was quite possibly the max breakout event, and you should be sure to stay on the lookout for this player in the future. But what if we told you this might have not even been a top 2 run a Little Mac player made over the same weekend?
What's up, YouTube? It's your favorite Into the AM sponsored gamer, me, Rotate It Downwards for Walter, here to tell you about today's sponsor. You already know it's Into the AM. Oh my God. God, that felt terrible. Are people actually like this? Okay, anyway, thank you once again to my good friends at Into the AM for sponsoring today's video. If you've been watching my channel for a bit, you know that Into the AM is my longest standing partnership, and I truly do love their products. They've been around since 2012, making mostly graphic tees, but have since expanded into casual and formal wear, athleisure, and even dropped a dope fall collection this year, which I've been wearing as the weather cools off. Into the AM is having their biggest sale of the year for up to 60% off site-wide starting November 13th, so it's a great time to get some products for yourself or for others as holiday gifts. I personally love the Daybreak Performance jacket and joggers combo, and I've been wearing them pretty much every time I travel for event work. Anyway, if you're interested and want to take advantage of the massive discounts coming your way, you can get another 10% off if you use my discount code WALT at checkout or go to intotheam.com/Walt. This is a bit of a mandatory note I include in these sponsor segments, but that link does afford me a small commission and kind of allows me to keep getting these sponsorships, so if you do end up picking up some clothes for yourself, I'll get a small kickback, and also thanks for considering it. Thank you as always to Into the AM for supporting me and the channel, and I hope you enjoy today's video. On the other side of the world, in Japan, Delta 8.5 gathered nearly 200 players in a tournament just as stacked as Regen was. From top to bottom, the event was filled with Japanese talent, and knowing how diverse their character pool can be, it was no surprise to see a Mac player do well, but Lee Mac, not Little Mac, made one of the most surprising runs of the entire event. Hitting the tournament scene in 2021, Lee Mac's results have improved year after year, but has never quite managed to crack a Japanese ranking, which again is a pretty tall order. In 2023, Lee Mac picked up wins over Shogun, Flo, Karage,
Kage and Doramigi, yes, that Doramigi, and 2024 had been a bit more quiet for him, but Delta changed all of that. Mac started the event with a 3-1 victory over Akaikitsu, ranked number 31 in the world and an SPR ranking of 8, and he also managed a 3-2 win over Takara in the losers bracket as well. He eventually concluded at 25th place, getting top 32 at an A tier with solo Mac. So I mentioned how it wasn't completely unordinary that a Mac player did well at a Japanese event because Japanese character rosters are just really, really deep, but that's also because Japan is actually kind of full of top Mac players, as insane as that may sound. Reps like Kurubi and Kyoko have also managed top 64 placements at majors in the past and beaten their fair share of ranked players since Ultimate's release. But there has been one Japanese Mac in particular that since Ultimate's release has been sneakily racking in a treasure trove of high-level Ultimate wins. This is a player arguably more skilled than every player we've mentioned so far, and he could have single-handedly put together a case for why Mac shouldn't have even been near those bottom-tier conversations. Enter Tarakotori. Now, a majority of North American Smash fans became aware of Tarakotori in 2023 during his Watch the Throne campaign. Well, more like a player named Little Mac Main, who single-handedly donated thousands of dollars to get Tarakotori through the final rounds of the voting phase, but that's besides the point. Tara's competitive journey began in the early days of Smash 4 as an online warrior, using his signature Little Mac, of course. Between the newly birthed Smashmate and an array of online events, Tarakotori was slowly getting to play against some of Japan's best. When he did have his occasional offline appearances during Wii U's lifespan, it was generally anywhere from 65th to 25th place, which were respectable results for sure, but nothing particularly noteworthy. It wasn't until Japan's final Smash 4 major prior to Ultimate's release, Umebura Smash 4 Final, that Tarakotori made his breakout performance. With over 500 entrants, Tara managed to place 9th, beating seasoned players like Kameme, Pasiriman, Takara, and even Zachary, a player who would go on to dominate the Japanese scene in the newly released Smash Ultimate just 3 months later. Unfortunately, this outlier of a performance remained as such for multiple years to come though. Like I mentioned previously, Mac was seen as one of the weakest characters upon Ultimate's release for all of the reasons we mentioned before. Tarakotori still managed to find success in defeating top 50 level players like Hikaru, T, Etsui, Rain, and AIM with his call-out heavy style during the game's first year of release. As the meta continued to develop though, his experience alone wasn't enough to push through these brackets. His average placements fell back into the double digits range, and many would have said to pick up a different character and that he was only limiting himself. Year after year, patch after patch, Little Mac continued to be looked at as one of, if not the worst character in the entire game. But Tarakotori was a glass half full kind of guy. Not only was Mac just his favorite character, he wanted to prove something, that this character was capable of so much more than anyone could have ever expected. In 2020, when the pandemic limited the scene to exclusively online events, Tarakotori was able to tap back into his roots and now had consistent run-ins with the best players in the country. Fast forward to 2022, and the narrative began to shift in a positive way for Tara and his trusty Little Mac. He's an intelligent player that's not afraid to take a risk, often making big callouts in neutral by forward smashing a shield or calling a jump with a side B, and as he began to add matchup-specific experience to his playstyle, his Mac started to ascend. This garnered the respect of the Japanese scene, but his results would do even more in that department. Ken and Takei, two accomplished Sonic mains, fell to the Mac in bracket in 2022, and that is an insanely hard matchup for the record. But if you recall the tier list shown earlier, these characters are quite literally on opposite sides of the list, so these victories were huge and are a foreshadowing moment to an event we'll get into shortly. 2023 was filled with a great mix of performances from Tara. He outplaced his seed at both P tiers and was consistently placing 65th or 97th at the country's biggest majors. A very impressive run was at Gen 1.1, where he managed to upset Marcos, Takara, and Neo on his run to 13th place. Having a list of at least 10 other top 100 wins under his belt throughout the year was not a bad look for a Little Mac player, and was part of the reason he did gain recognition during Watch the Throne voting. Little Mac Main was onto something. 2024 started off slow for Tarakotori, this time starting the year with back-to-back underperformances at P tiers. In late March, we got to see him take his talent to North America for the first time at Battle of BC 6, where he placed his seed, finishing 25th. He did pick up a pair of strong wins in Danny and Ed Dog, but was 3-0'd by both Spargo and WebJP. It was clear that Tara was good enough to beat players he was better than in terms of seeding, but once he reached a competitor good enough to not just exploit Mac's weaknesses, but outplay him as well, he just didn't have the tools necessary to make some of these upsets. Maybe he needed to play better, maybe he needed a perfect bracket, maybe it just wasn't possible and he needed a new character. But if those things hadn't been enough to stop him before, they definitely weren't going to now. On August 21st, 2024, Tarakotori made the best run of his Smash career and arguably Little Mac's best tournament performance ever at Sumapa 151, a local. Okay, wait. Before you go to the comments and say, this dude is really making a video about Little Mac doing well at a local, are we really glazing Japan that hard, dude? Come on. Okay, dude, it's Little Mac. Give us a break here. Please just let me, bear with me for 1 second. Let me give you some context for why this is such an impressive feat. Yes, of course this was a local with just 32 entrants, but 9 of them were ranked top 150 in the first half of the year. Using Keneki's Lumi rank tiering calculator, we can see that this event, a local, would have been listed as a B tier major if it did count for ranking. So this was not just some random event. As the 13th seed, Tarakotori had an uphill battle ahead. After his first set, he was projected to play against exclusively ranked players, starting with Uame's Olimar. Tara has actually had a favorable set record over Uame in the past few years, and was able to continue that here though. Mac's ability to effectively rush down and kill Olimar, as well as deal with the Pikmin, make this a surprisingly good matchup for him. In the end, he was able to throw together a 2-1 victory to win this set. His next opponent was Rimu, one of Japan's best Min players, and one of Little Mac's biggest obstacles in any bracket. Imagine a character whose biggest weakness is getting edgeguarded, and best strength is punishing linear approaches against Mac, who for all the reasons we discussed isn't quite suited to combat this kind of playstyle. Also, Min's just like a longer boxer than Little Mac, like just the arms go... They're so, yeah, okay. This is where we saw the difference between Tarakotori and a majority of other Mac players out there though. Tarakotori himself actually thinks this matchup is about even for Mac, which, I mean, that's kind of insane, but go off, King. But he has a different perspective than the average player. Not only were his reactions in the 99th percentile, his game IQ is out of this world. For the amount of times he was thrown off stage, he lost only 1 of his 3 stocks to an edgeguard through the set. This was because of 2 factors. For one, he almost never let Rimu get the chance to use his arms. With a great understanding of what Min is looking for, Tara was able to navigate his way through neutral and use Mac's top tier run speed and fastest overall moveset in the game to close the space in a matchup that seems impossible on paper. Because as long as Mac gets the chance to hit you, no matchup is unwinnable. The other factor was, ironically, his offstage game, as well as his ability to remain nearly un-edge-guardable. His use of Mac's counter in particular worked amazingly against Min's long arms, allowing him to slip to the ledge and reverse a situation that seemed like certain death. Game 2 was a last-hit encounter, where Tara finished Rimu off with another display of Mac excellence. His projected opponent and the number 1 seed Umeki was upset by the up-and-coming hero player Kamisuke, setting up Tarakotori for a very familiar matchup, honestly. It was very obvious that both players were extremely comfortable playing one another, as the pendulum of the match swayed between each competitor in an instant. In Game 3 though, Tarakotori's plot armor came into full effect, as he, for the second game in a row, mustered up a win over the hero, winning the set 2-1 and securing a top 3 spot. And of course, this was already an all-time great Little Mac tournament performance and one of Tara's best ever, but little did everyone know he was only getting started. On the other side of the bracket, winner semis consisted of 2 titans of Japan, Ken and Shuton, who had played well over 60 sets coming into this tournament. Ken was looking amazing to start, but Shuton turned the set around from what looked like a 2-0 to a reverse sweep and a matchup against Tarakotori in winners finals. For those who may be unfamiliar, Shuton was recently ranked the number 6 player in the world on the 2024.1 Lumi rank and has been a consensus top 5 player in Japan for the entirety of Ultimate's lifespan. With that kind of reputation, I'm sure what I'm going to tell you wasn't much of a surprise, but Shuton was 5-0 against Tarakotori. Yeah, it turns out this guy is pretty good at the game. While it was usually against the Olimar, Tarakotori's best showcase was a single encounter against Shuton's Aegis, actually, a close 2-1 back in 2022. And for the first time since, Tara got a shot at the Aegis again. Shuton did play Olimar the set previously, so maybe he just felt Aegis was his best option. I mean, come on, it's Aegis and this is Little Mac. Surely it couldn't be that hard, right? Well, Tarakotori was going to show him a little bit different. Shuton opened up game 1 with a solid confirm, but Tarakotori managed that with a string that put Shuton on the ledge. From there, he punished a jump switch from the ledge, then bred yet another switch in the air, killing with a rising uppercut and snagging the first stock of the set. Being one of the only characters that can actually keep up with Aegis in the frame data department, especially on the ground, Tarakotori was able to get some other solid callouts throughout the game. On the ledge especially, he was getting some huge reads on Shuton's jumps, which is traditionally a very safe option to do against Little Mac. On the final stock, Shuton was searching for a dare confirm on the Hollow Bastion platform, but Tarakotori was not biting. He caught Shuton running on the platform with a fast fall up air into rising uppercut confirm, going up 1-0. This was his biggest set so far, and he was not going to let it slip away. Game 2 opened with an incredible lead by Tarakotori, but just a few hits from a Max Rage Pyra was all it took to KO Tara and put the game in Shuton's favor. A master of adaptation, it seemed like Shuton had finally fallen into his rhythm like he had in the previous set against Ken, tacking on a considerable amount of extra credit before losing his own stock. Against all the odds though, Tarakotori managed to do it again. He got an edge guard with Little Mac. This time around, it was a sequence of 3 successful reads, countering Shuton's down tilt on the platform, doing a haymaker to beat out a blazing end attempt, then footstooling Shuton's low recovery. Tarakotori was now in the lead and got 69 nice % before closing his own stock. In the final moments of the set, it was once again Shuton on the ledge and Tarakotori on the defense, catching a jump attempt from the ledge, stuffing out a Pyro Dare with his up smash. And just like that, Tarakotori had picked up his first ever top 10 win, which was arguably Mac's best win in Ultimate history. He broke the streak against Shuton, as well as secured a spot in winner's side of Grand Finals with Little Mac. As you would probably assume, loser's side was pretty insane, but once again we had a familiar face in Ken, making his way to loser's finals to face off against Shuton for the run back. Unfortunately for Shuton, he didn't have the mid-set breakthrough he had in their previous encounter, getting shut out in a 2-0 loss. All things considered though, Tarakotori was probably happy about the draw he was getting here. Both players are incredible, sure, and wouldn't be easy to defeat, but he had actually beaten Ken in their first ever encounter back in 2022. He was also generally just able to take games off of the Sonic, so a victory wasn't improbable, but it would be his hardest test so far. The tools that Sonic has accompanied with Ken's traditional playstyle generally make it a really non-interactive match for the Little Mac player. The mix of Mac level speed, in fact better than Mac level speed, frame data but actual good recoveries, consistent combo games, and ways to edgeguard Little Mac make it hard to consistently win sets in a tournament environment. Within 15 seconds of the match starting, we already saw all of this into full effect, with Little Mac on the ledge getting harassed. Tara lost his first stock at 76% and lost his grip on this match pretty shortly afterwards. His attempts at closing space were getting stuffed out over and over, all while Ken was being relentless off stage. Game 2 opened with that non-interactive playstyle from Ken we had mentioned before that makes things so hard for Mac, especially when you have to play so committal. Ken simply waited for his opening, closed the space from nearly halfway across the screen, and killed him off an edgeguard. Ken was anticipating many of Tara's general matchup check options like haymaker and neutral and getting great punishes in return. Despite Tarakotori's recoveries being next level, against the top level player they're eventually going to catch you, and Ken did just that. He didn't really seem to care if he had to rack the damage up to 150% or higher to finally get the kill, because he knew sooner or later he would come to get the kill eventually. The same went for the next stock, with a forward air to finish the 2-0, and the bracket was now reset. With all of these sets being best of 3, Tarakotori knew he needed to change something. He would manage to get Ken down to his last stock, but the games weren't looking very close. He would eventually slip up and give Ken something he wanted, and for Little Mac this is sometimes just a death sentence, and all you need to completely blow a set. Tara patiently walked forward to start this first game of the reset, and after a quick scramble read that Ken would shield upon landing, he punished that with a grab and got the lead to start off. He immediately ran to center stage and told Ken 5 words: "You are not hitting me." Ken started to play like he was legitimately in the ring with Little Mac though, absolutely terrified. Over the course of the next minute, Tara took just 12% while taking Ken's first stock with this insane strength. He was beating Ken at his own game. Tarakotori ended this game with a KO punch read and a 2 stock, disrupting Ken's momentum entirely. Game 2 was on Battlefield, a notoriously bad stage for Mac because of the top platform, and Ken had every intention on using it. Tara got a shield break relatively early on, but because of the positioning and the percentage Ken was at, he had to settle for an attempted setup versus a strong punish, but he unfortunately didn't land it and had his stock taken not much longer after that. In an inverse of what we saw in the first game, Ken dished out a frustrating 2 stock to Tarakotori, and we were now in a game 3 with all the chips on the table. Small Battlefield was the choice here, and Ken started with that same force he had in the game prior, getting an early edgeguard onto Tara and gaining a significant lead. Once Tara got his turn though, all it took was a couple of hits to rack up well over 100% on Sonic and KO him with a dash cancel F tilt without taking much damage himself. He pressured Ken immediately upon respawning, getting a pair of dash attacks to get a lead, and just like in game 1, Ken was forced to approach. Ken decided to use his secret weapon though, pinball mode. Using his pair of spin moves, Ken was circle camping Tara to try to bait a risky approach out and get a big punish, but once this failed to work, Ken took to the ground and Tara took advantage immediately, reading a roll-in with his KO punch. Tarakotori was now 1 stock away from winning this tournament, and, well, we're gonna let the gameplay speak for itself here.
Ken needs to be really careful if he wants to win this. Oh, the air dodge. Oh, he wanted to kill Tarakotori off the top. But yeah, couldn't react to the DI in time. F tilt. Oh no! Like one more could do it. He did. He did it. No.
In one of the most wild and unpredictable local tournaments ever, the 13th seeded solo Little Mac player Tarakotori was able to win Sumapa 151 over 9 top 150 ranked players in the world, none of which were him. Like many of the other stories I tell on this channel, this is just a reminder that you don't need to pick a top tier character that you genuinely think is unfun or stupid or lame just to win in this game. Players like Tarakotori with Little Mac or Toriguri with Banjo have proved that even an obviously low tier character can reach the highest of highs in Smash Ultimate, while ones like Shattuck and Beast Mode Paul have innovated and helped their characters show what they're truly capable of. And if this video is anything like the Donkey Kong one, the next Japanese major is gonna have like 6 Little Macs in top 128. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please be sure you subscribe and leave a like on the channel. It really does mean a lot, and like I said before, we're trying to get to 20K by the end of the year. It would really be cool if we could get that. That's it. All right, bye.